Hey everyone, my name is Jared, and today I wanted to talk to you about my experience quitting my full time job and traveling around the world for roughly 8 months. So, um, really, what I want to encapsulate in this video is for you guys to understand kind of my background and how I put myself in a position to be able to um, feel financially independent enough to be able to quit my job and go off and do just things that I love. One of those things is traveling, and I know a lot of people out there kind of aspire to do the same thing. And so, really today, I wanted to kind of talk about how I got myself into that position and kind of talk about my experiences traveling abroad. And if you are thinking about quitting your full time job, kind of again, considering this as maybe an inspiration to help you decide that okay, maybe I do take that step and um, quit my job in order to do the things that I want to do or you want to do um, in your life. Um, so, kind of give a background, my background. So I'm 31 years old. I live in San Diego, California, so not a bad place to live. I've been here in San Diego since 2019, so I've been here for almost 6 years, which is kind of crazy. I'm a California native. I grew up in Central California near Fresno. So, for those of you who don't know where Fresno is, if you kind of imagine California, Fresno's kind of smack center in the state. And I actually grew up in a small ag town outside of Fresno. So a lot of way different than where most people, when California comes to mind. Um, but so grew up in the Central Valley. Um, Went to school along the Central Coast at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. It's a polytechnic school, um, really strong engineering school. And growing up, I really was really fascinated with software and technology. And so when I went to college, I actually majored in computer science. Uh, Quickly realized that computer science wasn't for me during my first year of school. Ended up switching to graphic communication, which is kind of like graphic design. There's a kind of a broader sense of topics in that major. But I ended up landing in software, and what I do profession for today, I'm a UX designer or a UX UI designer in software. So basically, I like design icons. I create buttons and figure out how people go about using software and push pixels around. So that's kind of what I do as a profession. Um, in college, I um, luckily was able to get a couple of internships in UX design, and that really helped set me up for success. Upon graduating and landing in the tech world, which was kind of like a dream scenario when I was, growing up when I was in high school. That was really like my yeah, the goal was to like work at like the tech giants of Apple or Google. And so I actually started my career at a company called Workday. They make HR and finance software. And I was at Workday working in the Bay Area for about 5 years total at the company. I was located in the Bay Area for 3 years and relocated to San Diego in 2019. So just like right before the pandemic, worked remotely for them for 2 more years, and then I actually found another job that was fully remote and worked at that job for about a year and a half. before I decided to uh, quit my job and kind of start this whole travel journey. Um, and so I'll kind of back up to 2019. That's kind of like where when I moved here to San Diego. So um, that was kind of like the wild west when it came to like remote work. And so at first, I actually really enjoyed it. My company like flew me out to the headquarters in the Bay Area every quarter to go work with the team. And then I would come back and I just really enjoyed it. And then the pandemic hit and then everyone kind of went remote. And that was kind of like a shift for everyone. And in 2021, so 2 years after I moved to San Diego, I fell in love with the neighborhood that I live in. I lived in North Park. It's like a very urban area of San Diego, and found a condo in this area. I live in University Heights now, which is kind of directly north of Balboa Park. But anyway, I was able to thankfully buy a condo, and I actually uh, uh, purchased the condo in 2021 and moved out of the house I was in. So I was living with some roommates in 2019 and 2020, moved into my own place in 2021, and then got a new job that was remote. And long story short, when I'm a very was very career driven coming out of college, and so moving to San Diego was definitely like a mental shift as far as kind of prioritizing uh, kind of life and just my lifestyle over my career. And I think that's kind of where all of this whole new or different perspective came to be, was really moving down here to San Diego. And when I started working that new job, really enjoyed it at first, and then one of the reasons why I ended up quitting, the original hiring manager that brought me in ended up leaving the company about a year into me joining, and kind of the culture on the team. I hate saying culture, but like just the overall dynamics of the people I was working with definitely took a shift in a way where I wasn't really happy. Um, and when I was working remotely, I was also living alone too, and so those two in combined really kind of made me feel isolated. And that's when I decided that I really needed to maybe make a change. And so, yeah, in 2021, yeah, I got that job, and then fast forward about a year and a half later, in early 2023, May 2023, that is when I decided to kind of drop everything, and made the bold decision to quit. And kind of this is where I wanted to maybe pause and kind of take a moment and understand, like, I know it's really difficult um, to be able to just have the courage to quit your job, um, and it there's a lot of factors. I mean, one is money, right? So like I live in San Diego. It's a pretty expensive city to live in the United States, if in California, if not in the world. Super expensive to live. Um, and I was living alone, and again, I was just not happy with kind of the situation. I'm single, so I was able to like meet to there really was no kind of strings attached. There were a lot of things that kind of aligned that allowed me to do this. And and it was honestly one of the hardest decisions of my life. I was making over $200,000 in base salary, and so to just kind of walk away um, from that was really difficult. But once when I did put my 2 weeks in and quit the job, it was almost like it was just so rejuvenating. I felt free to kind of go off and do whatever. And I have a younger brother that was finishing med school, and uh, he had been in school for that plus his undergrad, and so I was able to spend some time with him for about a month, and then my dad as well. Had a really good time being able to um, just spend time with family, and then one of the things when I quit my job, I told myself that I wouldn't look for new work um, for 1 full year. And then I would maybe revisit that. Um, and so from May 2023 to May 2024, that was kind of like my time to say, hey, Jared, let's go off and do things that you've been wanting to do. So one thing that I love to do is travel. Love traveling internationally. At that point in time, I had done a big Europe trip with some friends for 10 weeks right after graduated school, but before I started working full time. And I've done like trips here and there, international trips. Like one of my favorite cities is Mexico City. Um, and so living in San Diego, I can just drive down to the border and fly out of Tijuana and then be in Mexico City like in 3 hours, which is crazy. It's awesome. Um, but where I was going with this was, yeah, I decided that I wanted to do some traveling, and I've always wanted to go to South America. And one of kind of my bucket list items I've always wanted to do was hike the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. And so I went ahead and booked that, and then booked a one-way ticket to Medellin, Colombia, and kind of planned out the first 3 weeks of my trip, basically all the way up until I did the hike, the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, from like the Cusco region in Peru, and then after that it was kind of like it was an open-ended book. I just kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. Um, and this was actually the very first time that I kind of traveled solo for an extended period of time. At that point, it had been like 3 weeks was kind of the initial plan, and then I had a wedding to go to at the end of, I think it was October or September, and so I was kind of bookended by that wedding for South America. It had been about like, so there's 3 weeks, and then I had another 5 weeks to decide if I wanted to continue the trip or not. And I ended up using that entire time. So I ended up staying in South America for a whole 2 months. But maybe what I can do right now is kind of show you really quick I have my computer right here, so I'll just kind of show you kind of where I went on the South America trip, because it's awesome. So here's my laptop right here. So I'm located here in San Diego, in that dot right there. And so I started my journey from Tijuana, flew all the way down to Medellin, Colombia, which is right here. Medellin, then went to Bogota, and then flew all the way down to Cusco. Cusco's right here. So I actually had a layover, or I think I spent 2 days in Lima, headed to Cusco, and then did Machu Picchu. And then I think I did a day trip or two to a couple different spots, kind of in this region in Peru. And then, so I'll kind of pause there. So Cusco really was like did I really want to continue on my trip? And so the one thing I really want to maybe talk about is traveling solo. It is one of the most incredible, if not one of the best things I've ever done for myself in my life, is to travel solo. I mean, I don't speak that great Spanish. My español no bueno, but just the other travelers and the other people that I was able to meet, um, truly incredible. Just all these backpackers all around the world, from Europe, um, travelers from Asia, from um, Australia, New Zealand, just kind of all over the place, which is really really awesome. Um, on this trip, my I decided to um, spend most of my accommodation, like I would say 95% of the time I was staying in hostels, and did the whole dorm experience. And I just think as a solo traveler, that is 100% the way to go, because it allows you to meet people. Maybe you get some shittier sleep, but I think the trade off of being able to connect and meet other travelers, I think is just, it outweighs all of it. So, kind of my story is when I landed in Peru, I went to Lima and I had like a day or two layover there. At the hostel I was at, there was this couple from the guy was from the UK, and then the girl was from Germany, and they had been traveling for um, at that point in time, I believe 9 months, and they had mentioned to me that they were traveling for a year, and they were in month nine, and I was just kind of like blown away by, like, okay, a whole year and 9 months. I was like, you guys have to be like tired, right, from just all the traveling. And from for them, they said that, I mean, they were still just loving it. And so that actually kind of gave me the courage, after meeting that couple, to um, to do a more ambitious 5 month trip out to out to Asia, um, and Australia and New Zealand. And I'll kind of get into that map as well. You guys can kind of check out where I went to. But um, they I, they were one of the most inspiring couples that I met. I met them at the hostel. We went on a tour together. We spent, I think, a good 2 days together before we ended up parting ways, because I ended up going to Cusco, to go to go hike the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. Um, but it was in that moment where I was like, wow, this is like amazing. Like being able to, um, talk to other travelers about kind of where they've been. And they were talking, or they were mentioning places that I had never heard of. And so, like, one of the beauties of traveling is, um, yeah, just being able to talk to others, and getting to see where they've been, and kind of unlocking new places that maybe you might want to visit in the future. One of the reasons why I was inspired to make this video today is I actually booked, just yesterday, like last night. I was up to like 2 a.m. booking flights and my accommodations for another trip to South America that I'm going to be doing in about 2 months. My favorite American football team, the Los Angeles Chargers, used to be the San Diego Chargers, but they're actually playing an international game to start off the NFL season in Sao Paulo against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm actually a season ticket holder for them. And so when I heard that they were doing that, I was like, okay, this is maybe a good excuse to be able to string together another trip. And so that's kind of one of the reasons why I've kind of had this energy to make this video and kind of talk about my experiences traveling. But it all started with kind of my experience traveling solo for the first 3 weeks, um, in Medellin. Gorgeous city, highly recommend it. I went to Bogota, and then Lima, and then Cusco. And so let me show you the rest of where I ended up going. So the first 3 weeks of the trip was was kind of pre-planned, and then the last 5 weeks of the trip ended up being kind of trailblazed. Like it was almost like where was the next place? I don't know. And so it was a lot of me on the spot trying to figure out yeah, places where I wanted to maybe visit, and places that I didn't think I was going to be going to on this trip, and I ended up going to, and it was just like whole spontaneous. The spontaneousness of the trip was, I mean, just so fun. I just enjoyed it so much, and kind of planning out this next trip kind of um, um, gave me those kind of same feelings about the excitement of being able to travel solo. And so yeah, let me show you guys kind of the rest of the the trip. So I was in Cusco, went back to Lima for a couple days, and then I ended up flying all the way down to Santiago. So Santiago is the capital city of Chile. Did a day trip to Valparaiso and Vina del Mar. And I actually, because I went during, I think it was in August, so it was their winter. So I actually went snowboarding. I picked up snowboarding a couple years ago. So I went snowboarding not too far from Santiago, it was maybe an hour east, which was sick. So I went to Santiago, and then I ended up going all the way down to Patagonia. So I actually flew all the way south to this city called Punta Arenas, I believe was the city that I flew into. And then I took a bus from Punta Arenas all the way up to go to Torres del Paine National Park. The portal city is called Puerto Natales, is right here. And so stayed there for a couple nights, and then was able to kind of explore and did a day trek in Torres del Paine National Park on the Chilean side of Patagonia. There's two sides. There's the Chilean side, and then there's the Argentinian side. So I only was on the Chilean side. And the conditions are pretty harsh because it was in the winter, and so I was only able to do a pretty nice day hike. It was, I think, in total around 14 miles, mostly in ice and snow, which was really, really sick. So I went down there, then flew back up to Santiago. And by the way, Santiago down to Torres del Paine National Park is about a 3-hour flight. So it's pretty far down south. I mean, I was pretty much almost at the tip of South America. There's Punta Arenas right there. That's where I flew in from Santiago. So after that, I decided to go to Buenos Aires, and I actually met another fellow traveler in Lima, and we actually met up in Santiago because we had a similar itinerary. We ended up meeting in Santiago, and then we ended up meeting actually in Montevideo. I had zero intention of going to Montevideo, but what I ended up doing was I went to Buenos Aires for 10 days, and I actually had an old coworker that was located all the way down in Mar del Plata. And so I actually, it's about a 5-hour bus ride from Buenos Aires down to Mar del Plata. So I took a bus, visited my old coworker from the company I quit from, and he actually hosted me for like 2 nights in Mar del Plata. Super awesome, amazing. I was super thankful that I was actually able to meet up with him in person and just kind of get to know him more personally. So I got to go down there, went to Buenos Aires, and then I actually went out to Montevideo for I think a day and a half or 2 days just to go out and explore that city. Both incredible cities. Buenos Aires, they call it the Paris of South America, and for a good reason. If you have a chance to ever visit South America, Buenos Aires is an incredible city, and if you like big cities, highly recommend Buenos Aires. And so after Buenos Aires, I flew from there, and a lot of people recommended it to me was to go check out. Gosh, let me find it really quick. Iguazu Falls, Foz do Iguazu. It's all the way up here. It's on the corner of Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina. And it is really crazy. So there's actually like, here's the airport that's on the Brazilian side, and that's the Argentinian side. And then on the other side right here, um, this is Paraguay. So I actually went into Paraguay for like a couple hours to just go explore the city. So I could say that I've been to Paraguay, which is pretty cool. But we went to Iguazu Falls, and then I actually finished my trip in Rio de Janeiro right here in Rio. Absolutely stunning, stunning city and landscape. The landscape is absolutely crazy. So went there as well, and then I flew back up to San Diego. Ended that trip, and let me kind of fast forward. So this whole month, this whole trip ended up being around 2 months long. It was initially supposed to be 3 weeks. Ended up um, taking it all the way up to 2 months. And then during my time in Lima, I decided to book my bookend flights for my kind of bigger trip to Asia. And so let me get that map out and kind of give you a sense of like where I ended up going to Asia. This one's a little bit more kind of straightforward because I actually made a map for my parents so they like know where the hell I was at. But here, I started my Asia trip, and again, I did this for 5 months. And actually, what ended up happening was for the Asia trip, um, originally I kind of had an idea of where I wanted to go, but then, like I want to say 2 weeks before the trip ended up happening, I had the first month or 3 weeks I was in Japan, and so I had like the first 3 weeks kind of planned out before I left on the trip. And then, because I had an idea of what cities I wanted to visit and where I wanted to visit, I took a look at Google Flights and wanted to check out like how much flights were going to cost if I were to go to the different places. And gosh, almost, I want to say like 80% of the flights on Google were kind of considered low. The price was low for those dates. Google Maps or Google Flights has this feature where it kind of shows you a gauge if the flight that you're looking at is typically high, if it's normal price, or if it's low. 80% of them were low. So I just said, fuck it. I'm just gonna book. I just booked all these flights, a lot of them were like under $70. And so like I felt like, well, if it's for that cheap, and if I wanted to call an audible and you know maybe not go to that place or just go somewhere else, $70 wasn't a huge burden financially, so I just kind of took that. But I actually ended up following that route kind of through and through. And so here, let me show you the route for that. So I started my time in Tokyo, went to Osaka, Naha, and keep in mind all of this again was solo, except one of my best friends. He joined me for the first 2 weeks of the trip in Japan, and then I went off on my own for the rest of the time. So Tokyo, we did some time in. It's not circled here. It's in between Osaka and Tokyo. It's in like the kind of Japanese countryside. And then went to Osaka, went all the way down to Okinawa, which is like the Hawaiian Islands of Japan, Seoul, Korea, Hong Kong, Hanoi. And then from Hanoi, went to Da Nang and Hoi An, Ho Chi Minh City, Phnom Penh in Cambodia, Siem Reap in Cambodia, Bangkok, Thailand, Chiang Mai, Thailand, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and then Singapore. And so the whole Asia portion of the trip was around 3 months. So I actually kind of went through each spot fairly quickly. I mean, each spot I was staying in between 5 and 8 days, I would say, in each of the different stops. So it wasn't like super rushed, but it wasn't slow. And then after after my time in Singapore, Singapore is all the way down here. I flew all the way down to Melbourne, and this like whole like matrix will make a little bit more sense. But went down to Melbourne, started my time there, and then went all the way up to Cairns, Australia, and I actually got my open water diver certification in the Great Barrier Reef, and that was actually one thing that so so I was doing research, and it's always been a bucket list item of mine to go to the Great Barrier Reef, and I was like Googling online, like searching, like, okay, well, if I visit the Great Barrier Reef, should I snorkel or should I dive? And I think it was like on Reddit, someone had an analogy where it's like if you're a skier or a snowboarder and you go to Aspen and you don't ski, it's like, what are you doing? They said the Great Barrier Reef was similar to that, where if you go to the Great Barrier Reef, like it would be stupid not to go dive. And I'm not like super good in water. Like water, I wouldn't call myself afraid, but I just don't like the idea of getting into the ocean and swimming in open water. But so that was kind of like an internal kind of battle that I ended up kind of overcoming. Kinda. I'm still scared of water, but I actually got my open water diver certification. It took me five days, and I did 4 open water dives plus a fun dive. So I got my certification up there, which was an absolutely amazing experience. If you guys are on the fence of like going off and trying to get your open water diver certification, it was one of the most fulfilling things that I've done in my life. Um, and I mean, it's just kind of insane how um, it's just a different world under the water. It's just a whole different world, and you get just a completely different perspective. And feel just incredibly thankful to be able to have that experience, to be able to even have my first diving experience to be in the Great Barrier Reef. Okay, um, went to Cairns and then went all the way down to Sydney. Spent a whole week there. Absolutely love that city. Public transportation, amazing. And then went back to Melbourne for the Australian Open. So I was in Australia for the whole month of January. So I started the trip in October of 2023 and finished in February or March 2023, or 2024. Sorry. And yeah, went to the Australian Open for tennis. I'm a huge tennis fan. So it was actually it's one of my bucket list items to go to all the Grand Slams, and this one was like the hardest one to get to. So check that one off the list, which was really awesome. Went all the way down to Tasmania, and Tassie is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful part of Australia. If you get a chance to go down to Australia, I highly recommend going to Tasmania. Went all the way up to Brisbane, Gold Coast, and then finished off in New Zealand. And I actually bought a camper van, and I can talk about this. I know a lot of people are interested in doing the whole camper van thing in New Zealand, and I was able to do the camper van thing for a whole month. I did the whole month of February. So I bought a camper van in Auckland, which is like the major city in the North Island, and then kind of traversed my way through the north all the way down to the South Island, and then ended up selling the camper van in Christchurch. And so that was an incredible experience altogether as well. And just for your perspective, I ended up buying a camper van instead of renting, because it actually was cheaper for me to buy the van and then sell it off to the next traveler, or sell it off versus renting it for the whole time, when I was kind of crunching the numbers. So kind of showing you here, started my time in Auckland. And actually this was, maybe this is not the most up-to-date one. I ended up going to Auckland, and then I ended up going to, I believe, this is like Hobbiton right here. This is like where, the Lord of the Rings set was filmed. So I went down there, went all the way up here. This is another little, like a little surf town called Raglan. Actually reminded me of like Cayucas or Morro Bay here on this California Central Coast. So I went there for a couple of days and then kind of traversed my way down here, did a bunch of hiking, made my way down to Wellington, and then I took a ferry from Wellington to Picton. Wellington to Picton. Oh no, here this was the modified trip. Okay, this is the modified trip right here. So I ended up going from here, and then Lake Taupo, and then went all the way down here to Wellington, and then took a ferry from Wellington to Picton, and then went on the west coast along the west coast of the South Island. Went down to Wanaka, Queenstown, and yeah, I don't think this. Okay, this is version 1, and then here's version 2. So I did the same mistake, but here you can see in black, those black circles, those were like the modifications. So I actually went up to Nelson, did a couple hours there, then went to this national park. Yeah, I went down the west coast and ended up doing these black arrows were like day trips. I just did like excursions out to these like fjords over here. Wanaka, Queenstown. Wanaka was probably my favorite town in New Zealand. Queenstown, Dunedin, and then actually visited one of my friends that lives in this little cute town along the kind of the east coast of the South Island, and then kind of continued all my way through, and then ended up in Christchurch, and then that can kind of concluded my trip. But yeah, the little town right here where my friend lives, Oamaru. Oh my God, such a beautiful little town, cute little town. They're known for these little penguins, but yeah. So that to kind of wrap up, that's kind of like what I ended up doing on the big 5-month trip. So I had the 2-month trip in South America, and then ended up doing the big 5-month trip, and both of them were solo. Absolutely crazy. Would highly recommend, if you have a chance to be able to go off and travel solo for an extended period of time. I would just highly recommend doing it if you're able to pull it off. One of the big takeaways that I made while traveling, just from talking to all the different types of travelers around the world, Americans, at least in America, we are kind of wired to work. And it's kind of in our culture to, start your career, work all the way through till retirement age, and then go retire and have a happy life. But when you get to retirement, like 55, 60 years old, I mean, at that point, you're not as active as, like, for me, I'm 31. I started traveling, or I started doing all this traveling when I was 29. And because of my health and my fitness levels, I mean, I'm not the most fit, but I'm able to do just all the different crazy hikes. I was able to go snowboarding and just do a lot of, just be able to do the experiences that I was able to do. I'm not sure if I would be able to do them at the same like caliber or same level if I were doing this when I'm 50. And so, but one of the things that I wanted to kind of point out is, while I was traveling, there were so many other travelers that were traveling for months at a time. And when people met me and they knew I was American, they were kind of shocked that I was like traveling for like 2 months when I was in South America, and then 5 months for the big trip. because that's just not normal, not common. But believe it or not, a lot of other travelers that I met um, from all over the world, whether it was Australia, a bunch of European countries, like the Germans love to travel. The Aussies love to travel too. French, I mean, just all over, like many of the European countries. There are a lot of people that fellow travelers that I met that were traveling for months at a time, and it was very normal. And so that was kind of like one big takeaway for me was um, that there were a lot more people like myself that, yeah, had this itch to be able to go off and spend time outside your your own country. And not only that, so Americans, whenever you meet an American, most of the time, the max like length of trip an American's going to take is 2 weeks because that's all that like our jobs will able to allow us to do it. Unless if maybe you're like a teacher or something, and maybe you have the summer off and you can take extended vacations. But for most Americans, it's not the case, and so um, I feel like as an American, we are missing out on kind of the meaning of life in many aspects. In regards to work, like before all this traveling, I wouldn't call myself a workaholic, but I do take pride in my profession and my career. And when I decided to just kind of drop everything, quit, um, it ended up becoming this realization that it's not all about the money, um, and it's not all about my career. And really, what it's all about is to be able to go to a different country, a different society, and gain a new perspective on what it means to live and live it in a different way, in a different perspective. And I think that all the traveling has really um, kind of inspired me to continue um, to do this lifestyle. And so, like, when I got back to the United States after all the big travels, it had been almost a year. I got back in March, and May was going to be the 1 year mark, May of 2024. So last May, um, and that's when I decided to kind of decide, did I want to continue to live this kind of like this new lifestyle, or go back to full-time work. And so kind of the next thing I wanted to kind of talk about was um, kind of the new things that I've kind of gotten into with this lifestyle. So one of my good friends, one of my really good childhood friends from back home, um, I went off and visited him. He lives on the Central Coast in California, so had a chance to visit him, and I was talking to him about all the traveling, and we were catching up, and he had gone back into sports cards. So like baseball cards, football cards, basketball, and I was just like, oh my god! Like, so I'm a sports fan. So maybe I'll show you, like, you see all that stuff in the back right there. I want you guys to take a look. So this is like my room, and all this stuff back here. This is kind of like what I've been up to over the last year, is collecting sports cards. And what's crazy is, so my buddy, he's a big sports fanatic like me. I'm a huge Charger fan, so he ended up getting me into collecting uh, football Chargers football cards. And so it went from collecting to actually trying to attempt to flip sports cards. So like buying a card at a certain price, knowing that the value of it was maybe more, maybe I can make a profit off of it. So I ended up dabbling into the world of flipping sports cards, and then I ended up becoming a streamer on this app called Whatnot, and basically sell like NFL or football singles, and it's just kind of like snowballed into this kind of insane side business that I now do in conjunction with I now work a part-time job doing UX design. So like my profession, just part-time, I put in around 5 to like maybe 20 hours of work, and then I do this sports cards thing on the side, which is like my friends probably watching this right now, they're like, oh my God, that like there's just it's kind of insane that I've kind of it opened up a whole new world that I never knew about. And it's so funny because I did all of this world traveling, and then I come back to the United States, and I do the most American fucking thing ever, and then I start like buying and collecting and selling sports cards, which is just like pretty insane. But what I was gonna say was all of this probably would not have happened if I didn't quit my full-time job initially. Um, and so I think one of the other big takeaways I've had, um, I traveled for a whole year, and then over this last year, I started getting into this whole card thing. And me being a designer and like a little entrepreneur, I was involved in the entrepreneurship club when I was in college, and I've always had this entrepreneurial mindset. Um, I went from traveling, got back to the States, and started up doing this whole side sports cards business of flipping sports cards. Um, and it's been kind of a wild ride. And I just don't think it would have been possible if I had not taken that kind of had that leap of courage to go off and quit my full-time job. Um, and so the next piece I wanted to maybe talk about was like how was I able to get myself into this position to be able to quit my full time job? And maybe we'll spend another 10 minutes. I know this video is already approaching like an hour long, and so but I think this is all really good. Like I think really good things to maybe think about as you kind of ponder on your own life and kind of challenge uh, your status quo and what you might be doing right now today. And so I went ahead and I wanted to pull up my a couple documents that I have kind of done, or spreadsheets that I've made for my personal use to kind of understand my finances. And so one of the reasons why I was able to pull this off was um, um, I've always um, been living below my means. And what do I mean by that? Means that I am trying my best to save as much money as possible and not like overspend. I know as Americans we're consumers, and we like to spend money, but the first couple of years out of college, I made a huge promise to myself to try to save up as much money as I can to put myself into a financially stable position. So yeah, I wanted to kind of walk through some of the documents that kind of helped me um, understand like my finances, um, and I think everyone's going to be different, but really it's to understand how much money are you able is coming in from whatever sources of income. um, um, Taking the money that you saved and investing that. For me, I've mostly invest things in the stock market, um, and put money towards my 401k and my IRA, my quote unquote retirement. Um, and yeah, so let me just show you guys what that looks like. Um, So this document right here, so this was actually when I lived in the Bay Area. It's personal utilities, but just to kind of illustrate to you, uh, being organized, I think, is one really, really important thing for, I think, making it financially, making yourself financially independent. It's just knowing what you're spending. So here, this was actually when I lived in the Bay Area for a total of 35 months. And you can see a breakdown. I broke down like gas, electric, water, my internet, trash, phone bill, car insurance, renter's insurance, all my expenses. And I pretty much kind of did that and then gave myself a budget for food. And then for rent, what I try to do was um, always lived with roommates to try to save money to be able to put a down payment so I can buy a property for myself. And so that's what I ended up doing. So I have that, and then I actually bought a brand new Tesla Model 3 in 2018. So like when that car first came out. And one of the things, guys, it's actually not smart to buy a vehicle brand new, but for me, there were a bunch of tax incentives that California and the federal government were giving, and so I just kind of pulled the trigger, and I wanted to kind of see if the car would save me money over time, and it really has. But I've been tracking all my expenses on my vehicle since when I first got it, and you can kind of see like how much I've spent on insurance, how much I've spent on registration, which this is California registration for 6 years, which is absolutely crazy. Maintenance, etc. But the full picture is um, to to be able to understand how much money you're spending, and that's why I kind of want to show you guys these documents. And then so for the Asia trip, so people ask me, well, how much money do you need to spend, or how much money do you guys need to save in order to kind of pull off a trip like I did? And so one of the travelers that I met on the trip actually had this pretty insane spreadsheet that kind of outlined all his transportation costs, his housing costs, kind of any like tours or experiences that he did on the trips. And I thought it was just like, oh my God, this is like pretty cool. Like just to kind of gain an understanding of how much you're spending. And although I'm not like splurging on traveling, I'm also not penny pinching. But one of the big things that, in order to like kind of stretch my money, is stayed at hostels and did the dorms, and that kind of brought costs way down. With all the traveling that I did across the 8 months, I would say the biggest single expense was just my flights, just getting from point A to point B to point C to point D. Um, and then a long shot after that was housing or lodging, and then like food. I like to splurge on food. One of the reasons why I love to travel is just to experience the food that country has to offer. But so this is kind of an insane spreadsheet, but I wanted to kind of show you, this was the spreadsheet that I had for my big Australia, New Zealand, Asia trip. And you can just kind of see like, you can see the flights, what type of mode of transportation, how much money I end up spending. And so like, you see how it is kind of insane, but it really kind of gave me a good sense of how much money I was spending. So in transportation in total for the 5 months, I ended up spending $6,000 on transportation. Housing, you can kind of see the breakdown here. These are all the different places I stayed at. Those green check marks show if I did laundry or not. And by the way, let me show you my setup for when I traveled. So I'm a pretty minimalist traveler, and I just do the whole single backpack thing. So basically, I had this was my backpack. This was the backpack that I used for pretty much all the trips, the big South America trip and the Asia trip. It's a 42 liter Cotopaxi Alpa travel pack. And this was my life for, yeah, like 8 months. Really, really cool. Um, and actually, my South America trip that I'm going to be doing in about 2 months, uh, this is going to be my bag. It's actually only 30 liters. And this is going to be my travel companion for that trip's going to be 5 weeks. But my 5 week trip is going to be done in this bag. But all right, so there's that, and then so let me show you again. So we have the laundry. You can see how many nights I spent. So if you go all the way down to the bottom, so I spent 135 days on that big trip. I only spent $3,500, call it $3,600 for the entire trip. So that was 5 months of travel, or 4.5, 5 months of travel. I only spent on average $26 a day. And I would say a majority of that was actually like heavily weighted towards Australia, like Singapore. Those were the more expensive places. And then these are like all the experiences that I did. So I marked down all the different things that I did. So like tours, and whatever, like, fees, getting into national parks, whatever it might have been, $2,300 right there. And then I just did a kind of a matrix breakdown of like all the things that I spent. So $6,000. And so I think the big thing that you guys are all interested in is how much money did I spend on the 5-month trip? There it is. I spent a total of $14,667.98 USD on all travel. And you can kind of see the breakdown of all the different places, all the different countries, how many nights I spent per country, how much I spent for lodging, transportation, and how much the average was per day. I think that's a really good indicator of how much money you can expect to spend. And like I said, I definitely, to save money, I primarily spent my time in hostels in order to save money. But then I kind of splurged on like food, and then did whatever necessary experiences. So I wasn't really on a budget, but at the same time, kind of this exercise helped me kind of gain an understanding of how much money I was spending on the trips. So anyway, to kind of wrap it up, if you're like 20 years old and you're watching this video, or you're 30 or you're 40, I don't think it's never too late to consider quitting your full-time job and taking some time off for yourself to go off and do some traveling or do whatever you want to do. I think like my experience is, since quitting my full-time job, I've kind of got the travel bug, but then also found some newfound like hobbies and passions because of quitting my job and now doing the whole sports card thing, which has been incredibly fun for me. So anyway, I think that's gonna do it for this video. Feel free to like drop a comment and I'll try to respond to any questions anyone has, but hopefully this kind of serves as like an inspiration to help motivate you if you've been on the fence of quitting your job. All right, talk to you guys later. Bye.